Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another one of our webinars. By way of introduction, my name is Lara Okpo, and I'm honored to have our guest speaker, Joe Lewis, with us today to talk to us about choosing the right independent school for your child. And as always, before I start, I would like you to pop in the chat where you're joining us from, and if possible, your child's age, just to give us an idea of the audience that we have this evening, and we can then speak accordingly to your child's age as well. So I will start. Watford. I'm joining from Watford, Hertfordshire. Yeah, you could put it in the chat. That would be great. Okay. Welcome, Kay. Welcome, Karina. Thank you for joining us, Iana, today. Oh, 3 years. Nottingham's from Kay. Thank you. Okay, so not to waste any of our time, so we will go into it right away. So as I said, it's always a great pleasure to host one of these webinars as an opportunity to connect with our parents, our audiences, and sometimes your children. And tonight is special because we have Joe Lewis with us, who doesn't just run. Thank you, Joe. Who doesn't just run a school, he's lived the independent school journey himself, from the boarding house to the headmaster's study. And before sitting in the chair he's in now, he was a pupil in a boarding school, a classroom teacher, a head of department, and senior housemaster across three very different independent schools. Joe's got four children of his own, so it's like a parent just like us. So he feels the pressure and the question we might have navigating all of this journey. And I cannot think of a better person to guide us through this conversation tonight. So before I introduce Joe, I'm just going to introduce myself for those that who do not know who I am, and then we will go right into it. So I'll talk about the structure and then introduce Joe, and we will start our conversation. So tonight's webinar is in a conversational style, just so that we understand it's Wednesday evening. I'm sorry, it's Tuesday evening, and we want you to be very comfortable and be able to ask any of our questions to Joe tonight. So, my name is Lara Opo. I'm the founder of Ant Learning Tuition, Supplementary Tuition. And at Ant Learning, our aim is to create a learning environment where children grow in confidence, independence, love of learning, and being able to feel capable at school, walking into school ready and secured in life. And we do this through building early reading mastery in core academic subjects like reading, learning to read. We teach children to read early before starting school, if possible, building early literacy skills and awareness of print. And we also support children struggling with reading to move to reading levels or more, and support children in maths, English, science, and also exam prep for those that want to apply to selective schools. And we do this with the overall focus to build confident, independent learners who can take up any challenge in life and excel. So tonight's webinar structure, as I said, will be in a conversational way. I will introduce Joe, will then set the scene for this evening and how to start the search if you are looking at placing your child in an independent school. We'll go on to matching your child to a school, the admission process, and thinking about if you're thinking about boarding or day school, we can talk to you about the difference, any myth, and any question you might have. And then we talk about the academic foundation in an independent school. Then we open up the floor to your questions and answers. But please, if you do have any questions while Joe and I are having a conversation, please do put it in the chat. I will look into it and I can and raise this up with Joe in between. Sorry, ring. Yes, so I can raise this up with Joe during the conversation. Okay, so I will introduce Joe this evening. Just 1 second, let me find my notes so that I can do justice to this. So Joe Lewis was a boarder at Malvern College before reading English and Italian at the University of Leeds. His academic travels included a year in Geelong, Australia, and a period of study in Milan, Italy. Joe has taught at St. George's Weybridge, Pangbourne College, and Millfield School, where he held leadership roles including head of department and senior headmaster. He's currently the headmaster of St. Ronan's Prep School, a school he runs alongside his wife, Millie. Together, they have 4 children and share a passion for traveling and the great outdoors. Joe is a keen sportsman and voracious reader, and is a strong advocate for boarding and the tremendous opportunity it brings. Joe, we welcome you this evening to Ant Learning, one of our webinars, and we appreciate the honor of coming to and just honoring our invitation this evening. Welcome.
Well, Laura, thank you very much for having me. Delighted to be here. Really looking forward to discussing all things educational.
Thank you. And we are very excited to have you because I remember being in this position maybe almost 13 years now. And when my son was 3, and then you're always thinking about, okay, what do we do with this little one now? So I can
Yeah.
imagine for a parent that is just starting the journey, or actually probably I've started with a state school and thinking about transitioning to an independent school, tonight will be very, very helpful and insightful for them to make such decision and just be able to know what they're getting into as well. So thank you for joining us this evening. So Joe, for parents who are new to independent school education, can you explain the difference between pre-prep and prep school and what age ranges we're talking about here?
Yes, of course. So in very simple terms, um, pre-prep, as it suggests, is the beginning of the journey. Um, and that is roughly nursery through to year 2. So you would say ages 2 to 7. And then the prep school is the preparation really for next steps and their senior school, which lies in between the pre-prep and then senior. The prep school usually runs from year 3 to year 8. And so that is the equivalent of ages 7 to 13. And really, when they move up into year 3, it's where they begin to take part in more academic challenge. The sense of academia deepens often as they go up through the school. Schools are looking for the growth of independence, especially as they go into the final 2 years in years 7 and 8. But you're also seeing, I think, their talents emerge in those key formative years between the ages of 7 and 13. You're seeing their passions emerge, and children are prepared really thoroughly for whatever academic pursuits that lie ahead. But also, I think importantly, yes, it's the academic development, but it's also the emotional and the personal development which sit at the center of a prep school. And for me, that's one of the defining factors of a holistic prep school education, is that there's so much emphasis on their personal development, on the values, on building character. But of course, there are important academic areas which are covered as well. For senior schools, generally, they will leave at either 11 plus or 13 plus, depending on what type of school the parents are looking for them to move on to. Of course, there are grammar schools at 11 plus, private schools at 11 plus, and the majority will take them also at 13 plus. So I'd say the key difference between a prep and a primary school, it's not necessarily the ages. I would say that the key differences for me as a head are developmental, because you're really building the foundations of their character. And then once they're in the prep school, you're discovering their talents. You're trying to look for that spark, but you're continuing their development of character and academic potential all the way through to hopefully 13 plus exit, as they are at my school.
Thank you so much. Even I learned something new from just what you said about the focus for a prep school and the difference in the pre-prep. So would you say that if I want to get my child into a pre-prep, what the school is looking for is different from what they're looking for at prep school, based on what, as I heard, you're looking at developmental spark, academic potential, because they're
Mm.
growing, right? So for a
Yeah,
pre-prep, yeah, would that,
I think so. I think generally the pre-prep is more about giving them the opportunity in probably a smaller class environment, and to really focus on the fundamentals, the reading,
mm,
writing, and
mm,
learning how to interact socially and personally. And then in the prep school, I would say that it's when the academia deepens, like I
okay.
said, and there's more challenge, there's more stretch if required. And owing to the slightly smaller class sizes, and the better teacher pupil ratios, children are known personally. But I would say expectations continue to be high throughout the whole time that, they arrive at a school such as mine.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So what does a typical day look like in a
Yeah.
child for a child at a prep school like St. Rhodan's, and how does that compare to what a child experiences in a state school?
Yeah, thank you. It's a really good question. So I would say that the days are longer, and there's more of a sense of wraparound care in place.
Okay.
Um, but really busy, purposeful, and full. But more fundamentally, they can come for breakfast. They stay through to 5:15. They can stay for what we call prep or homework, and they can stay for supper or food through to 6:30. Now we're a boarding school, and they can board after that. But fundamentally, the care is there to busy working families between the ages of the prep school 7 to 13, and in the pre-prep it's kind of 2 to 7. Um, the days are long, they're busy, they're packed full of, yes, subject specialist teaching, but also I think one of the defining factors of an all-round prep education, and it's something that parents are probably really keen to hear about and look for, are the extra
Mm,
opportunities that one gets beyond the classroom. So the sport, the music, the art, the drama, the outdoor learning, the clubs, the activities. So there's a dynamism about their days, and the opportunities to be outside, to be playing, and to have that freedom, I think, is very special.
mm,
Um, I'd say probably the main differences between a typical prep school, independent education, and a state primary are probably the class sizes. So children, to an extent, are known more personally.
mm,
I think there's greater access to specialist teaching, because, for example, in the prep school where they are here, they have, triple science, computer science, Latin, music, drama, French, and it's all done by subject specialism. So that added to the broader co-curricular program is something which is very attractive to parents. The longer days, again, busy working families. Um, I think again that's a very attractive aspect to a prep education, and then in some cases the boarding. So the biggest difference I would say, and to an extent the strength, is
mm,
the breadth, because I think the schools here are designed for the whole child,
mm.
intellectually, socially, physically, creatively. They're not just covering a curriculum; they're looking at the whole person.
Yeah.
Um, and then to end, I would say that there's a phrase I like to use, which is the hidden curriculum. And
Mm,
those are the things that you don't necessarily see so explicitly, but are so important for the building of character and the sense of DNA within a school. So, for example, here we have a farm, we have a beach school in the summer, forest school, bushcraft. Um, they go to chapel, we gather together, we sing, we have orchestras. In the summer, we barbecue together. There are things which are very special about childhood, and we talk about protecting childhood, about the magic of childhood. And I think, these are the things that can come with an independent education, because these children are given more of an experience. and
Mm.
their appreciation, well, I should say appreciation of the aesthetic um, is something which is really developed. And you can have a lot of fun with that because you have a bit more time and a bit more freedom.
Thank you so much. You're making me think about, oh, do I have another child to send to your school?
Yeah, yeah.
Ah,
I could
okay.
go on.
I can imagine. There's a cheeky question I wanted to ask because I get asked this question a lot of times. Parents will ask me, do you think I should send my child to uh, independent school at primary level
Mm.
or at the secondary school level? I just thought
Yeah.
this might be the right time to answer that question if you can.
Yeah, I think like most questions around education in general, it's very hard to generalize because of course you're talking about an individual. And
Yeah.
so I would preface the majority of my answers with it really depends on that individual child.
Mm,
And they develop at such different rates. Um, and especially, whether it be gender, girls developing slightly earlier, but also boys and girls developing at different times across their whole childhood and into adolescence. Um, so I think it really does depend on the individual. I would say the ages between 7 and 11 are incredibly transformative
mm,
because the importance of reading, writing, arithmetic, science, core subjects, it really stacks up. And I think if you can get excellent teaching and learning, and for the children to develop strong subject knowledge and strong specific skills in the key core areas of the curriculum, then that will stick and that will stay with them. And it's
mm,
scientifically backed up by research which dictates and shows that they are more likely to succeed at GCSE level if they've had that formative experience, like I
mm.
said, between the ages of 7 and 11, I would say are really important.
Okay, thank you. So, as you said, it's left to the parent and no understanding their child to make that decision. Thank you. You were a boarder at Malvern College, and how did that experience shape the way you think about children,
Yeah.
what children need from a school environment?
Yeah. So for those not familiar with Malvern, it is a big old boarding school up in Worcestershire in the Malvern Hills. Beautiful. And for me, yeah, it was transformational. I think it taught me a lot about resilience. And I had a real sense of belonging there. I boarded there between the ages of 13 and 18. I thought of it as my home, I suppose, where I lived with my best mates. And I think for me, therefore, the relationships that I developed mattered deeply and still do. And they were incredibly healthy. So I think that's a core part of boarding in both prep and senior, is that your ability to develop strong and healthy relationships and navigate and understand relationships through emotional intelligence, I say, is something which has stayed with me. Um,
Mm,
I think that pastoral care is, at the forefront of these boarding schools, and therefore you're really looked after. Never more so nowadays, um, is the focus on well-being,
yeah.
and that experience really shapes everything. I think you're taught about structure, about being self-starting. You're taught about what standards look like, having high standards. Um, and I really think you feel part of a community, which, as we know, historically humans have always had an affinity for being part of
Mm,
communities.
yeah.
And I think if you feel like part of a safe, known, and valued community as a teenager, that's really important for your well-being. They're not institutions; they are communities. And I really enjoyed the house community, the school community. And luckily enough, I made the most of a lot of the opportunities, mainly in sport. But there are opportunities across the board in music and drama and academia, which um, really allow you to discover your talents and your brilliance. I think to an extent you have to be
Wonderful.
self-starting, and you're encouraged and
Yeah.
coached to be self-starting. But again, you're learning about how to make the most of all the opportunities in life.
Oh, that's great. Wow. So when a family starts looking at independent schools, what are the most common mistakes you see them make at the very beginning of that process?
Yeah, I would say from my perspective, I lean towards more holistic decision making and not something focused solely on results or league tables, shall we
Mm.
say. So I think outcomes matter, but it's really about the personal fit and as I've said before, about the individual. Um, Secondly, I think choose the school for your child, not for you. I heard a very well respected and influential figure in education saying that a lot of parents really want to choose the school that they want their child to attend, but it's not necessarily the right fit for that child. And so I'd say you really have to flip it and choose the school that is really, really the I suppose the appropriate fit for your child, not the one that you would have wanted. Um, they're not necessarily always the most impressive on paper, online, but it's the one where your child will thrive. And so you've got to go and have a look, and you've got to um, rely on gut instinct to an extent, amongst other really important areas such as academic outcomes.
Thank you for saying that because I think for children choosing senior schools, sometimes we look at the league table, especially investors as well, and
Mm.
you think, okay, what is their A levels outcome? What is their GCSE outcome? And I picked something from what you said, choose a school for your child and not for you. That's a good one because it's very easy as parents. You want the best for your child, but then you just like this school and you fancy it and you forget about what is right for your child. So thank you for
Ah,
reminding us
absolutely.
that. Parents often ask us how early should we start thinking about this choice of school? Is it ever too soon? And is there a point where it becomes too late? Because I heard some parents put their children on waiting lists even while they're
Mm.
pregnant.
Indeed, yeah. Um, well, I don't necessarily think it's ever too soon to start thinking about it. It can't do any harm. Uh,
Hmm.
but to an extent, maybe too late to start acting on those thoughts. Um, so I would say there are some key entry points um, where schools and depending on the demographics and the geographical situation of where you are in an urban environment, probably more likely to be waiting lists and more competition for places. So for the key entry points around year three, 7+, 11+, year seven, or indeed 13+ into senior school, it's wise to begin exploring 2 to 3 years in advance. Um, and I think you really need to understand your options, visit the schools, and then think about their journey, think about where they're going to end up, and join that educational journey up all the way to 18, because it has to be a cohesive experience for the child. Um, I think schools are generally very flexible. They want to work with parents. Late decisions always possible. Um, but nevertheless, in the current climate, I would say 2 to 3 years, go and have a look, narrow the pool down to not more than three schools, and then really follow your instincts around what you think would be the right fit for your child.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And this is a follow-on question because you've worked in some different schools, St. George's in
Yeah.
Wadebridge, Pangbourne, and Millfield, and each with its own character. So, should parents be looking for to understand the school's culture beyond what's on the
Yeah.
website?
Yeah, great question. I think, well, first of all, you're going to have a look at the website. That's the shop window. And you can learn about the mission, the vision, the values. But ultimately, the litmus test is when you visit the reality of visiting a school. Yes, I've worked at very different schools, but underpinning all of the schools, the culture reveals itself. And I would say what you should be looking for culturally. How do the children interact with the adults, for example? How do the adults speak and interact with the children? Um, I think that you should be looking at the way that the pupils carry themselves between lessons, in their interactions, whether it be in sport or extracurricular, and you can pick up on atmospheres, the laughter, the positive relationships. So I would say, look for those unscripted interactions, those micro behaviors, which say a lot about the hidden culture of a school. And you can really pick up on that, I think. I think that you should always try and get a tour with a pupil, and you can ask them about their experiences, and they're always very honest
Yes.
about the school. And that's something which is very important, as opposed to, I would say, an open day where it's all set up for the parents. You don't necessarily get to lift the bonnet and have a look at the inner workings of the school as you would if you were just going there on a personal tour and meeting a pupil, and just seeing, as I said, about all the different interactions between the different adults and children at the school.
Great, thank you. So if I go back to what you said about choosing a school for your child and not
Yeah.
for you, how do you advise parents to honestly assess their child's strength and personality when thinking about school fit? What signal should they be looking for?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that it depends what age, obviously, because they're developing at
Mm,
different rates, and so that to an extent you could ask the school that they're at, or the nursery, or the pre-prep, or the primary school, um, and work collaboratively with that school around what they think the child's strengths, developing personality, are. But as a parent, you know your child the best. I think it would be helpful to suggest that you just observe your child at play.
mm,
You observe your children when they're maybe under a bit of pressure. Consider whether your children relish competition, or do they need more reassurance in certain situations? Are they resilient? Do they need support? Do they bounce back? Um, some individuals really crave structure, whereas some children prefer a bit more freedom.
mm.
And I think children, they're always telling us who they are, not necessarily verbally, but they're always telling us who they are through how they behave, how they interact. And so just to have an understanding of that, of those key areas around freedom, structure, and how they react to certain situations, I think that can dictate um, what type of school you think they should be attending. If I could
Yeah.
just digress, for example, here we live on a big site in the middle of the countryside, so the children really love the great outdoors. They have space, freedom, a lot of free play, and parents comment on that, that sense of freedom that they have here. And so again, that would be, thought of as something which would suit a particular type of child.
Thank you. So, depending on what you observe, you can then determine if my child thrives in an academic environment or a place where is an holistic approach.
Yeah, I think especially in prep schools, I think because um, generally more in a senior environment, um, you can generally understand the way their brains work a bit more. They tend
Mhm.
to be forming their study skills and the type of individual that they are. Whereas up to the age of 13, I think a more holistic environment is generally, the best fit.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, you're a keen sportsman and an advocate for boarding. You clearly believe in the power of a whole school experience beyond academics. So, how much weight should parents give to sports, arts, and outdoor provision when choosing a prep school?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think this is huge. It's uh, really something which sets schools apart. And for me, how much weight, a great deal, should be given over to the extracurricular opportunities. Um, they teach children so much alongside just learning skills and sports. But again, it's the hidden curriculum around learning about teamwork, learning about perseverance, resilience. In the arts, let's say they're building a expression, confidence, and participation, and the opportunity to express themselves creatively. We have an outdoor education here which enables them to think independently, to give them perspective, and that works hand in hand with the academic focus. And I think it underpins that to an extent, because if you're getting all of the sport, the arts, the creativity, and your brain is being stretched in different ways, then once you're in the classroom, I think that it enables academic success, because character is built both inside and outside the classroom, and it's built in the spaces in these independent schools where you get so many different opportunities to try different things. And again, I think that can be really, really transformative for children.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So if I move on to the admission process, what does the assessment process typically look like at pre-prep and the prep level, and how is it different from the 11 plus style exams parents often
Yeah.
hear more about?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. Just take our school here, pre-prep, typically non-selective. What you will get is what we call a taster day, and just an opportunity for the child to experience the environment, and for the teachers to be observational and very gentle. And I think they're looking at their ability to communicate, interact, and just show those basic personal skills.
Mm.
In the prep schools, at the more competitive end, there might be more formal entry requirements at maybe 7 plus or 11 plus. This could constitute maybe an English or a maths assessment. But in independent schools, interviews, group activities, spending informal time together is just as revealing and often part of an overall assessment. And that, I think, is very different from the high pressure 11 plus, which many will know is high stakes.
Yeah.
It involves tutoring, and it can take up a lot of time and effort for those families involved. So I would say there is a distinct difference there, where you have an 11 plus assessment for a grammar school or a 11 plus for a private school. They do have their differences, and I would say that the 11 plus grammar school type assessment is much more high stakes. And obviously that does apply for the more selective academic schools, generally in cities and towns.
Correct. Yeah.
Our school here is less academically selective. It's more of a comprehensive intake. And I certainly don't want children to be stressed.
Okay. So for a child entering at 7 plus level, to your school,
Yeah.
how does the assessment generally look like?
Yeah, like I said, it would be more looking for potential,
Okay.
for the way that they interact, their attitude, far more than any specific academic ability or data.
Okay.
So, we're just looking at how they are comfortable in their surroundings. Obviously, there's an element of if they need a lot of support, and if their profile shows that, they need a lot of support outside the classroom, then that would be another conversation, because we might say that we can't necessarily provide all of that support. But that's a very rare conversation. And we're just looking for children that will contribute positively, and hopefully thrive in the holistic environment that we provide.
Thank you. So at Hand Learning, literacy and reading skills
Yeah.
are something that we focus on deeply. And how
Mm.
important is a child's reading and literacy level when it
Yeah.
comes to being assessed for a prep school or probably a senior school? And how
Mm.
visible is that to the school during the assessment process?
Yeah, so I'd say from an early age, obviously reading is foundational. It
Yeah.
underpins everything, and we're looking for that comprehension, to foster a love of reading, to enjoy literature, and to have the confidence to write
Yeah.
and understand words is something which we do look for. And if we can identify support for that child, then we will put that support in place from a very early age. We're not necessarily looking for precocious children. We're looking for secure foundations, certainly at prep school level. I would say the importance of their attainment kicks in more should they be looking at 11 plus, 13 plus when they're getting to that age, when schools will be looking for a degree of ability should that school be academically selected. And it really depends on the pathway that the parents are choosing. There will be schools that would rule out a child immediately by looking at their data, but there are a lot of schools that would welcome that child in and look to work with them to get the best out of them as they work towards their GCSEs. So it's really about understanding and using the data, making sure that you understand the way that that child works and their confidence and how they navigate through Key Stage 3. And then it's really important that the right fit is found for that child and the right senior school in that sense.
Okay, thank you. And this is not to put you on the spot. How honest are schools when a child isn't quite ready, or if that child is not the right fit for your school? And how would you say to a parent, apart from a letter?
No, I think honesty is being kind in that sense, although it's not always what a parent would want to hear. We know that children develop at very different rates, and sometimes 1 year, an academic year, can make a huge difference. So I think in a very rare event in a pre-prep or a prep environment that you're not offered a place, I would say that you need to trust the professional judgment of the school, and then ask for feedback. Schools are looking to guide. I would say schools are kind institutions. I don't think that you should feel rejected, but just feel that the school are being honest. But as I said, in pre-prep and prep environments, it's very rare that a child's place would be rejected, other than if a school is saying, look, we just don't think we can support that child academically. You probably need to look elsewhere. Again, I think honesty is the most important thing there, and parents really need to understand that.
Thank you. And I understand during the 11 plus process, so if a child is moving on to a senior school, the reference from the school is very important. How,
Yeah,
because
absolutely. So yeah, sorry to interrupt. So let's just say that they're taking um, a child will leave at 13 and go to a senior school. The way it works is that they would sit a test about the same time as an 11 plus grammar test, so in the autumn term. And it's relatively high stakes at that point, because the majority of children will receive their offer in year 6 for year 9 entry. And so the testing process, the assessment process, and the selection process, I suppose, has got younger.
yeah,
And once upon a time, whereby it was a 13 plus assessment, that doesn't really exist anymore, and it's gone down to year 6. And if you get through that, then you generally have those 2 years left in your prep school before you go to the senior school, which you already have a place at. That's obviously very different to an 11 plus grammar style test, which is much more high stakes. And if you don't get the grade, then there's no place, and you have to look elsewhere.
yeah. So for a parent of a child that the child is in a
Yeah.
pre-prep school, probably
Yeah.
up to year 6, and they need a reference from the school, obviously, when they apply to an independent senior school. How
Mm.
important is it for a parent to follow the recommendation of the head of the school? Because sometimes they might tell you this might not be the right fit for your child. And
Yeah.
sometimes parents can get quite upset about it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
What is your view?
Yeah. I think. Look, the schools know
Hmm.
each other very well. They know the children's profile very well. And as I said, honesty is the best course of action. They want the best for the child. Ultimately, it's the parent's decision. But I think the advice from the school about their next steps is fundamental.
Correct. I agree. Thank you. You're a strong advocate for boarding. What do you say to parents who are interested but nervous, especially those whose children will be boarding from probably age 7?
Mm.
Yeah. What would you
Yeah,
say?
I mean that again, you can board from that age, but boarding now the trend is, much more to senior boarding and into sixth form. Uh,
Okay.
and I've seen boarding succeed across all the different ages between 8 and 16 to 18. So really, again, it depends on the individual. And some children would really revel in the independence, adapting to new environments, and really developing them personally. Um, and let's take a 14-year-old who is showing huge potential in a particular discipline, whether it be swimming or music or um, something which requires a lot of practice and a lot of dedication. A boarding school can offer an extraordinary environment for them to really realize that talent. And that I think is what sets boarding schools apart because they're 6:30 a.m. to 11 p.m. And so you really make the most of the day. And you have the facilities, you have the coaching, you have the expertise, and you have the environment, and everything is in place for you. And that really is the beauty
Mm,
of a boarding school. Then I think you have to think about what are we going to gain or lose as a family. Um, Boarding can be transformative, but it has to suit the child, but it also has to suit the family.
yeah.
And I think more schools are becoming more flexible. There's, flexi boarding during the week, weekly boarding, um, and families have to really consider closely whether they're willing to um, let go at a certain age. And like I said, it really depends on what suits the family and what suits the individual.
Yeah, thank you. I think for me, I can let my son go to boarding school from 16, and for my daughter, I could have allowed her from 11.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Exactly. They're so different, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for families who aren't sure whether to go day or boarding, what are the questions they should be asking themselves?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think, like I said, look at the child. Um, does your child revel in a sense of independence? And do they love
Mm,
adapting to change and new environments? And do they relish that? And does their character support that? Or do you think they need more nurture and support from home? And as you say, children, siblings um, can be very different indeed with regard to school and their approach and their character. And so you have to think, will boarding add value to their personal or academic development? So you
mm,
really have to think about each child individually and what they're going to gain from the experience. If done properly and if it's the right school, it can be completely transformative. But ultimately, um, it's a bit of a lottery because you don't know where they're going to land socially and the chemical mix of their peer group. And so
mm.
socially, I think is a bit of an unknown there.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay, great.
but
Thank you.
ultimately, it can make a huge difference to them if they succeed.
Okay. Just to remind our parents that you can actually pop in your question in the chat. We are almost rounding up our conversation and then open up for questions. So if you have any question before then, please pop into the chat and I can read it and ask Joe. So from where you sit as a headmaster, what academic foundations do you most want to see in children arriving at prep school? And if you could tell every parent of a 4 or 5-year-old one thing to focus on, what would that be?
Yeah, good question. I would say read to them
Okay.
um, every day. Take an interest in what they're doing. Don't do it for them, but coach them through it and show the child that you take a real interest in their education. But talk to them about current affairs and experiences. Build
Mhm.
their vocabulary. encourage their curiosity. You know, you can build English and maths into you know, most conversations. I mean, I'm not saying, you know, that you need to be like a teacher at home, but nevertheless, there are so many opportunities to encourage their curiosity.
Mhm.
I think, you know, use vocabulary which encourages a sense of value. So persistence, perseverance, talk about values and what they mean. But what matters most is really just, I think, sparking their curiosity, showing them that you're there for them.
Mm.
But read to them, just read to them, you know, and share that relationship, listen to them, be present. And, you know, that can just make a huge difference to building those foundations.
Great. That's really lovely to hear. And when children arrive at St. Ronan's with weaker reading skills than expected, how does the school support them? And what difference does it make when a child arrives already reading or confident?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we do assess them carefully. I think early intervention is important. And there are various different ways which we can support that. So small group work, targeted phonics, for example, literacy support, and then communicating that to parents and making sure that they understand what the school are doing. Um, to a child reading confidently, I think it fundamentally allows them to access the full curriculum. So then they can go more quickly, they're more independent,
Yeah.
and their knowledge and understanding stacks up. But I would say it's all about their progress, as opposed to anything um, around a starting point. You want to see them making clear progress,
Yeah.
and moving children forward from wherever they begin. And so children are tracked through their time, and then important decisions are made. So we use professional judgment alongside academic tracking, and then stretch them or support them accordingly.
Mm. Great. Thank you so much. We have a question from one of our parents. If a child is in a state primary school
Hmm.
and they are considering for them to go to an independent school from secondary school age for like say 11, what is
Yeah,
the application process and when should you start preparing?
yeah, good question. So let's say you're in a state primary. It really depends what type of school you're looking at. Um, there are going to be independent schools that will offer the last 2 years of 7 and 8. So you could go ostensibly at 11 plus, go to a prep school for 2 years before you move on to senior. Or I think more likely in your case, you're looking at 11 plus entry into a senior school, which is then 11 to 18. Um, I would say the most straightforward thing is to, like I said, the time scale is 2 to 3 years. So you probably want to start thinking about it. Let's say they're looking to move in year 6 into year 7. You want to be thinking about it in year 3 or 4. And all schools will have a fully operating admissions office and process. And you just get on the phone and say, look, we're thinking about your school. Can we come and have a look? Open up the conversation. And the schools will be very explicit and helpful with the whole process and about whether it requires any forms of assessment, and how you make that change after year 6. But guaranteed, all schools will be delighted to hear from parents and will be very informative and clear about how the process works.
Okay, so for that age, you do you say probably like year 4, year
Mm.
5?
Yeah, I'd say year 4 onwards,
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
you begin to
Okay,
have the conversation, you begin to look around, you get
okay.
in touch with the schools, and you begin to build that knowledge and understanding of the process.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, we open up to audience, and if you have any question, if you want to unmute yourself, that's great, or you want to pop it in the chat, and I will read that out as well. Thank you, Joe. I hope my
Okay.
questions were not too many.
The one thing I would say is to end. We talked about a lot about the differences between schools, but the fundamentals are the same. And I think let's just take the Winter Olympics, and some of you may have been watching the curling. And to use the metaphor, you're smoothing the path, aren't you, in that, for something to continue on a very smooth trajectory. And I would say what I see more and more is parents trying to smooth the path for their children
Mm,
and removing friction and obstacles for their
mm,
children. And I would say what I'm increasingly seeing is a lack of resilience and perseverance in children because they're having all the obstacles removed for them. And I would say if I could leave with one kind of thought, it's that you've got to let your children fail. You've got to allow them to understand how perseverance and resilience can be built in their early life. So let them fail. Don't take away the obstacles,
mm.
and they'll be stronger for it.
That is a lot of work, but it's very, very important for us because
Yeah,
it seems that parents are stronger than their children if we reverse when they were growing up. I mean, yeah, but yeah, that's amazing. Thank you.
okay.
Let your child
Right.
fail. Don't take away the obstacles.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Mm,
they'll be stronger for it in the long run.
mm. Thank you. Do we have any question for Joe? If you do, please unmute yourself or you can pop your question in the chat. I have a quick one
Yeah,
for myself. So if a child is going for A levels and I mean, would you say that's a good entry for an independent school or they could have
yeah,
started at senior school?
yeah, absolutely. I think again, it's a natural entry point after GCSEs. I think a different sixth form environment can be again quite transformative. If you and it depends where they've come from. If they've been in the same school, it could be 2 to 16, it could be 7 to 16, it could be 13 to 16, whatever. But sometimes they really need that change, and that change can be very positive.
Mm,
Um, I've seen, for example, at Millfield where I was, which we would have a lot of families sending their children to board from London
okay.
for the sixth form, and that was an important part of their development before they went to university, and so they were learning independence there. So I would say, yeah, absolutely, it can be a really positive move for sixth form for A levels, and also some schools will have a much broader offering at sixth form, so they might want to do a subject or a BTEC or something which the current school doesn't offer. And so you do see that movement there because the A level offering is preferable in a different school.
Okay, great. Thank you. We have a question from Ayo. Says, that means I believe it's your school. Do you offer scholarships and bursaries? And if you do, what are the criteria?
Yeah, good question. Thank you. Yes, I think we offer scholarships into year seven. So the equivalent of the 11 plus age group from year six into seven. We have various different disciplines, and the criteria, it's a level playing field. So academically, they would sit English and maths assessments. In sport, they would look at skills and fitness. In music, they would have to prepare a piece for them. In drama, similar.
Mm,
In art and DT, they look at portfolios. So there are opportunities in a lot of prep schools for 11 plus scholarships. Bursaries, yes, absolutely. It's very consistent, means tested, and all schools will happily enter into that process with a family. And then, if it's the right course of action, then a bursary could be offered um, for a family who are looking for support.
okay, great. Thank you. We've got Iyana's hand up. Iyana, do you want to unmute yourself?
Yes, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's been really amazing learning some of these things. I have a question regarding if a child in an independent school, like already in independent school, isn't performing up to the expected standard
Mm.
for the school, possibly maybe academically or in terms of other progress, like in terms of other things, I know there are opportunities like sports, science, and things like that. If a child, for example, isn't performing up to standard, expected standard, what can be done in this instance? Is it possible to move the child from that school to another school, or is there I don't know, what are the plans in place for this situation?
Yeah, good question. I think society is more dynamic. I think parents are more willing to make the move in the independent sector, purely because we operate in a climate where VAT and fees are much more sensitive, and there's more volatility. So it is known that parents will move a child, but personally, I don't think necessarily that's always the best option. I think parents should look to work with the school, and to understand why that child isn't progressing, and to be very clear and transparent about the expectations, about having high standards and wanting the best for the child. I think that sense of collaboration, based on clear communication, is the most important thing, and try to initiate an action plan and rely on the expertise and professional judgment of a tutor or subject specialist or a deputy head or a head or whoever's dealing with the situation. But ultimately, if you feel that you're not being served appropriately, and that the child isn't making the expected progress, then of course it's within your right to remove them and choose another institution. But I would say always try to work with the school initially, and highlight your concerns. From my perspective of a head, I'm very mindful of the commitment that parents, the commitment of financially that parents make to a school, and I think the service has to be incredibly open, and that you need to work with the parents and understand their concerns as much as possible. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Okay, we have another question in the chat. Can you defer entry? So instead of year 7, start at year 9, would they have to do another exam?
Okay, so can you defer entry? It depends. Let's just say hypothetically a child sits what we call an ISEB test, an independent school test in year 6. That will stay in the system all the way through, and a senior school could use that. It really depends on the senior school. Some senior schools will ask for an English and maths
Retest.
assessment, because they are more academically selective, and they want that data, and to be able to compare them with other children applying for that school. Some schools are not as selective. They don't require the test or assessment. They just simply rely on the reference, and the report of the school that they are currently in. So it really depends on the requirements of the senior school. Some are much more selective than others. And so again, it's about asking the prep and the senior schools what the process is, and making sure that the admissions is very clear. And generally schools really know exactly what an individual child will need to get into a specific type of school. So they're there to help and assist individuals and families with that process.
Okay, great. Joe, if that's okay, we have 2 hands raised. Are you
Yeah,
happy?
go for it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Becky, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. I joined late, so I just want to clear that I'm living in Warsaw, West Midlands. So I want to confirm if some of these schools is around in this area. And the second is, if it's yes, how old is he supposed that my children have to be before joining his school, please? Thank you.
So, Becky, if I repeat your question, schools in Warsaw, you want to know if they're independent school in Warsaw, as
Yeah,
well
I want
as
to know if his school is part of
is
Warsaw. Yeah.
oh, okay. Is your school, Joe, is in near Warsaw?
I'm so sorry. No.
Oh
Can I
my
just
God.
check? Are we talking Warsaw in the West Midlands, not the
Yeah,
capital,
Yeah.
not the capital of Poland?
in West Midlands.
Yeah, no, sorry. Forgive me.
Oh,
No, I think yeah, there's going to be great schools up there, in the West Midlands, really good prep schools. I think more and more parents are using AI to help them with. They can
Finding.
literally type in best prep school in near me. You get a long list, and they can compare fees, they can compare
Yeah.
offerings. There's so much help out there. but they're sprinkled liberally all over the country. These type of schools. A little bit of research online, and you'll find exactly what you're looking for.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Becky. I'll take Alika. Go and ask your question.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. My question was in regards to independent schools
Yeah.
is there any that incorporate ballet by any chance? As is something that I'm looking for heavily for my daughter currently, who's 5. And the second question was for Joe, if there's, out of all the schools that you've had the privilege of working with, which will you say you've seen be the most culturally diverse?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I worked at a school called Millfield, which was incredibly diverse. There were 70 nationalities there, and they flew in and came from all over the world. And so I loved that, that mix. It was just extraordinary, and it was like a beautiful recipe. It created a wonderful feeling about it. And so, for example, me teaching English A level, it had wonderful perspectives from Japan, from America, from Nigeria, from China, from England, and that was so healthy. And it's teaching the children about about being non-judgmental, teaching them about other cultures. And so it's really preparing them for a global society, which they need to be prepared for, because they're not just competing with those that live in the UK, they're competing in a global society. So if they can be given a bit of a head start with that, and to be really open to other cultures, then they'll be stronger for it. I forget, sorry, there was a first part to that question.
Yeah, sorry, it was if there's, out of all the schools that you've worked at, do you know, or just in general in your network, do you know if there's any independent schools that incorporate ballet, or I guess ballerina dance in general?
Absolutely. Yeah. So a lot of schools will have a strong performing arts and dance, whether it be, ballet or whatever, within that. My daughters attend a school which has a strong dance offering, and they perform in shows, and I love that. It's great to see. And again, it's very easy just to do a little bit of research into what a school will offer. But I think it's important to go and look at what schools offer, because schools will tell you, yes, we have an amazing dance school and they all do it for GCSE, but it might just be one or two. So I think you've really got to make sure that the research is thorough. But there are some amazing schools around the performing arts, and I've seen them in action personally. And it does add a huge amount to their experience.
Is there any that you can remember for me to then go off and research further?
Yeah, I mean, it's worth, just to hold up a mirror around perspective. So what I would be looking at is if you're talking about senior
at this present moment, well, senior or junior. She's only 5 at present, but we're training her up for that.
Okay. Yes, I would say my knowledge and understanding is I think schools generally, the performing arts and the type of coaching and facility tends to kick in senior, when it's a bit more specialist. But there will be specific schools, prep schools that do offer that. But I would hesitate to be more specific at this point. I could talk about senior schools, and if you're looking at big co-ed senior independent schools, they will all generally have really good co-curricular offerings. Prep schools tend not to have so much specialism. So again, I wouldn't hesitate in just doing a bit of research online to find out, what these schools offer. I'm sorry, I can't be more specific.
Yeah, thank you,
No,
Joe.
thank you, Ali.
For Ali, I would say that most schools are probably for the prep schools or the pre-prep, They also would want you to have something you're doing outside school that is supporting your child's ballet talents, and then you can bring that in to the extracurriculum they're doing within the school to just showcase our expertise and our talent, and that will really do help. But I think, as Joe said, the research will be very helpful to know which particular school around you is able to support her. Joe, I'm mindful we've run out of time, but we've got 3 questions in the chat. Are you happy for me to read them, or should we just call it a good night?
Yeah. No,
Okay.
happy to continue.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I've got a question. How have University Russell Group admission changed over the years with regards to accepting private school student? Is investing in private schooling a good bet if it will stimulate my chances to a good uni?
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I think if we're looking at Russell Group options, I think that there has been a lot of press about quotas and the inconsistency or the ratios of private school or independent schools to state schools and the places that they've been offered. I think postcodes have played a part, and there are contextual offers going on all the time at universities where it might depend where you're applying from and what type of school you're applying from that will dictate what type of offer you get. So if you're applying from an academically selected school in London, the offer might be different from a state school in a different part of the country. But nevertheless, I think investing in a private school education is absolutely worth it and will not in any way bar them from that next level entry after A level, because the Russell Group is a big group of universities, and the independent sector will hopefully get the best out of them and the best grades, and they'll end up where they need to be. So it should never be a barrier.
Okay, thank you. And this might also lead out to the next question. What should I look out for in searching for the best secondary schools that can help academically and otherwise get a child to his dream top uni abroad, MIT?
Wow. Okay. Well, I think, okay, so we're looking at America, we're looking at what schools do to prepare them for US applications. And some schools will have a very strong track record in US applications. And what we're seeing, we're seeing a bit of a dip currently because of the political climate in US applications. But in the past 10 years, it's really exploded. And I've seen boys and girls go to America on 110% scholarships.
Yeah.
They pay for everything, flights, you name it, all in. And then once they get there, the experience is extraordinary. So some schools will be very well versed in how they prepare them. And, you're talking how to understand the use of agents, how to navigate the complexity of a very different type of application process to the UK or European model. So I think you need to choose the school wisely, because some schools will prepare them brilliantly for a US application. They will have US departments of admissions specifically devoted to getting those children into these overseas universities. So the bigger, more established, diverse schools are more likely to get them into a US university because they will have a natural pathway and a natural understanding of that. So I would engage with the admissions departments in these schools, look at the data, how many do you send to US, how do they get there, look at the historic data, and just really dig deep into what the schools offer. And again, I do a bit of navigating online. AI is brilliant in giving data and giving you a bit more of a steer with regard to what schools can offer. Because there'll be a big group of schools, of UK independent schools, that send scores of boys and girls to US, and they'll say, yeah, we know how to get them there if they're willing to work hard.
Okay, thank you. And the last question for this evening, this is from Kay. Boarding schools are great. However, one of my concerns is bullying. Could you please share how the school prevents and addresses bullying? Thank you.
Yeah, I think all schools have an element of bullying. It's how they deal with it.
Yeah.
And they need to be very, very honest about that. I think that the the policies and the systems now are so robust because the scrutiny is ever more increasing. So you have to be compliant, and the inspections dictate that your policies and procedures have to be incredibly robust. And therefore, you know, the cultures there are scrutinized heavily. And therefore that's why the inspections are there. I think that what you're looking for, and sometimes they do have to be reactive to a specific incident. But what really matters is if something does go wrong, and if there is a concern from a parent, it's the way that the school deals with that, and how honest and open and communicative they are with the parent about the steps that they're taking to intervene, and the earlier intervention, the better.
Okay, great. Thank you. So before we round up, Joe, how can people find your school or read a little bit more about your school?
Yes, well, we're not near Walsall, so other end of the country, but so my school is south of Tunbridge Wells. So we're in the middle of Kent on the Sussex border. So if you're driving out of London and heading for the south coast, then you're heading in the right direction. But our nearest big town is Tunbridge Wells. And we see a lot of families who live locally who might have moved out of London, who are looking for a slower pace of life. We're not far from the sea. You know, we're half an hour from Camber, from Rye, from the beaches of England. You can get into town within 45 minutes to an hour, and we live in beautiful countryside. But you've still got London on your doorstep to an extent, into London Bridge and Charing Cross very easily. And we are a country prep school where we really believe in protecting childhood. We're screen-free, we're academically rigorous, but we give them amazing opportunities, you know, across all the different areas of the school, and they will all go on to very, very good senior schools with excellent characters. And so that's what we're in the business for, is preparing good citizens and making sure that they have a really positive impact on society as they grow up through their adolescence and into adulthood.
Great, thank you so much. And I just wanted to just mention to our parents that if you are looking for a setting that could support your child's transition, either from a current state school to an independent school, or you're a new parent and you just would like to be supported in the assessment process, especially for the competitive places at London schools, we've been able to secure admission to children in London in different independent school as well by supporting that process of preparation and just help building their confidence and competence in key subjects like maths, English, reasoning, and just getting them ready for this competitive entrance exam. So we have taster sessions if you like to find out a bit about what we do and how we can support your child in this process, build their confidence, early reading, and just generally enjoy school and feel capable at school in addition to what they're doing. We're happy to support you. So you can have a look at our website and book a taster session for yourself, for your child. And it's also an opportunity for you to meet our tutors, see how we go about things. And want to take this opportunity to thank you, Joe. It's been a very insightful evening. I've enjoyed myself, and I believe our audience have also enjoyed speaking with you and having this conversation. Thank you for honoring our invitation. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe I can research your school further.
Yeah, please do. Come and see us. Absolutely.
That's helpful. Thank you. Have a good evening. Thank you so much for everyone that joined. Enjoy the rest of the evening, whatever is left of it. And thank you. Have a good week.
Thanks so much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Lara and Joe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Good